Right now, after weeks of stalemate, the president finally reaching out to rank-and-file Republicans trying to make a deal. Could the so-called Common Sense Caucus be able to pave the path forward with the president? And next, are drone strikes ethical? Or are they making matters worse for us overseas? We're going to talk to an expert on drones on how they might be fostering anti-American sentiment abroad. And later, the gap between Wall Street and Main Street, the bell at the New York Stock Exchange, ringing in celebration today, but their relief not really being felt by that many folks at home. We will explain why. Good evening and welcome to RFL. I'm Andrew Whitman, in tonight for Richard French. Thanks so much for joining us on this Tuesday evening, March 5th. We're going to begin with some breaking news. Venezuelan President Hugo Chavez has died, ending 14 years of rule by the firebrand socialist leader. For years, Chavez has run Venezuela as a virtual one-man show, gradually placing all state institutions under his personal control. Although Chavez has passed away, his party is still firmly in control of the nation. His death apparently sets up a presidential election to replace Chavez, but in the interim, the head of the Congress there is supposed to assume the presidency. That announcement coming just hours after Venezuela's vice president, Nicolas Maduro, announced that the government had expelled 2 American diplomats from the country. Maduro said that he had, quote, no doubt that Chavez's cancer was induced by foul play that, quote, by historical enemies of our homeland. Chavez's inner circle has long claimed the United States was behind a failed 2002 attempt to overthrow him. He has frequently espoused anti-Americanism, trying to spur up domestic support within Venezuela. Hugo Chavez was 58 years old. And as we bring you back stateside, we move on to the Sequester, the top domestic story of the day, and complete coverage of all the moves happening right now to forge a deal and reverse all those budget cuts that are now in place. President Obama has begun reaching out to Senate Republicans, seeking a path that gets a deal done and includes spending cuts plus new revenue. That effort reportedly began with some phone calls this weekend. And that is pretty much it when it comes to deal making. Nothing else to report on sequestered deals, just some news about sequester pain. Flight delays reported at JFK and LAX airports as sequester cuts result in fewer custom agents to screen incoming passengers and fewer TSA agents screening outgoing passengers. It's a trend that Homeland Security Secretary Janet Napolitano says will only get worse, which, as you might expect, is making flyers more grouchy than they already are.
I would say 150 to 200% as long as we would normally expect. We will see these effects cascade over the next week.
Already kind of long, so it will be a pain. And if it's 150%, yeah, it'll definitely be, I mean, it's already bad.
30 to 45 I'm okay with. If it's getting to another hour, hour and a half, yeah, I wouldn't be happy about that. Definitely not.
Elsewhere, the government's first sequester-forced batch of furlough notices are in the mail, in this case to civilian Army workers. They're going to have to stay home without pay 1 day a week, every week through September 21st. That's of particular concern anywhere the federal government does a lot of business, like near Army and Navy-based towns, universities that are home to government-backed research, and most of Northern Virginia, where the federal government is the top employer. The furlough's not exactly welcome news there.
You know, these guys tell us they're going to do this and do that, and we put them in office. We give them the opportunity to serve us, and they get there and do nothing. It's frustrating.
It's frustrating, and there are new indications that frustration is extending to the nation as a whole, and not just in spots like the airport or in specific towns. Gallup's latest poll of consumer confidence plummeted 70% just last week as the sequester hit. That survey now at its lowest level since the end of December. If you remember back at the end of December, we were just about to hit the fiscal cliff. The first post-sequester polls are out. A majority of voters telling CBS they think they will feel the impact of the sequester if they haven't already. And more voters blame Republicans than blame Democrats. There is, of course, plenty of blame left over for both parties. So where are we going with all this? Well, for more and that, we're going to bring in tonight's panel. Jeannie Zaino is with us tonight, Dean and Professor of Political Science at Iona College. Welcome back. Dominic Carter, political journalist and author, is with us. And Richard Brodsky is here, former New York State Assemblyman, senior fellow at Demos, and professor at NYU. For the weeks building up to the sequester, we were thinking, boy, once you start seeing these reports of long lines at the airport and people losing Head Start placement, that's when the worm is going to turn on the sequester overall. It doesn't seem like we're there. How important is that to this debate? Do people have to feel the pain directly in order to put pressure on Congress one way or another on the sequester?
Well, normally, yes, but I don't think this is a normal conflict between the executive and legislative branches, and in particularly the Republicans in the House. They have, for their own political sake, to show that not buckling twice in a month, So I think this is going to go all the way to March 27th when the next phase of this nonsense kicks in. And then, if at all, a deal will come.
You know, all this talk that we heard, Dominic, as we built up to the sequester about scare tactics that the White House is using that's going to backfire on them. Do you think that's going to backfire? Are people going to say, boy, this wasn't as bad as President Obama said it was?
I don't think they're scare tactics. I just think that it's taking a little bit of time to kick in. And you know, Andrew, all I can think about, I mean, we can act like they're not major, but put yourself in a scenario, let's say a Virginia family. You're barely making ends meet. You're behind on the mortgage, maybe a month and a half. You're trying to catch up, but you just can't catch a break. And then you find out you're going to be forced to stay home a day a week until when you said?
September.
Until September. So how are you ever going to catch up on the mortgage? It's just not fair, the whole process. I mean, these guys, all of them, Democrats, Republicans, more Republicans, the game they can't shoot straight. It's just not right. It doesn't seem to be the American way.
Gina, your expertise is in polls and poll numbers. It's a pox on both their houses, it would seem, from the American people so far, blaming both sides. But the president's popularity was around 50%. Congress's popularity was around -50. Does that tilt the balance one way or another? Does anybody come out ahead if it's a pox on both their houses?